There's a lot of people trying to get to 100% certainty, whether to leave the job or the marriage or start the business. And they're struggling maybe at 60, 70, maybe 80, 90% certainty.
Yep.
But for some reason, we seem to need, certainty.
That's why I use what I call the iterative decision-making process. I'm only to take small steps. So am I trying to leave I don't like my job. I'm miserable there. Okay. Does that mean I walk in tomorrow morning and say, hey, boss, I hate it here, I quit? No, it doesn't mean that. It means I say, okay, I'm going to start putting my resume together. I'm going to start checking out LinkedIn. I'm going to start seeing what qualifications I might need that could improve my ability to get a new job. Once I've done that, I'm going to start sending out my resume. I'm going to start building some relationships with some people. And now I look up and I get another job offer. So I didn't make a crazy short-term emotional decision. I made a slow, progressive, iterative decision-making process that led me from a situation that I didn't like to an opportunity that seems more promising. And this could apply to just about anything.
I see this a lot in businesses. I see that the real cost in business, I spent about 10 years working in marketing. So my job was to work with the CMO and the CEO, helping them to try and make certain marketing decisions, invest in this platform, do this thing, whatever. And I came to learn over time that the biggest cost wasn't making a bad decision. It was the time you waste, the 9 months waiting for Joanna to get back from annual leave so we can have a meeting with Dave in procurement to get the invoice signed off, versus the CEOs that I worked with that said, let's do it now, when the decision was quite clearly low cost, relatively low cost, or reversible.
Mm-hmm.
It was always speed that seemed to win out, because most decisions are either reversible or actually more inconsequential than you think.
Very few decisions are final. Very few decisions are final. Even something like buying a house. Should I buy this house? Oh my gosh, it seems if you buy a house and you decide it wasn't the house that you wanted, you sell the house. It's like, now look, could you get caught in a bad market? And that can absolutely happen. So you need to be smart about your decisions that you make. But most things are not as final as they seem. Most things you're going to be able to, and you paid the realtor, so you lost 3% there. You paid the other realtor, you lost 3%. You had to pay the mortgage fees. So you're going to lose some money. But it's not like you buy $1 million house and then you decide you don't like it. You don't lose $1 million. You lose 80 grand or whatever, and it's okay. 2 years, 3 years, you get it back. So people think of decisions as being permanent. If you're in marketing and you approach me and you say, hey, listen, CEO, there's a new marketing opportunity that we'd like to get you into. And I go, how much does it cost? And you say $1 million. And I say, well, that's a lot of money. Can I try it for a shorter period of time? Well, yeah, but you won't get as much you won't get as much volume. And I say, okay, well, still, I don't want to invest that much because I'm not sure about it. Let's test it and see where it goes. And you say, oh, okay, we'll try that. And here's $100 grand and let's see what feedback we get. And if it's good, it's good. If it's not, we go somewhere else.
Do you think you're conditioned in some ways to have this sort of bias towards taking action? Because of your background in the SEALs, there was often some kind of time urgency. There was some factor that's causing you to have to take a decision. Is that?
Yeah.
In business and life, there's not. There's not like, we're going to lose this or someone's going to die or there's going to be an attack.
In the business world, the consequences are prolonged and usually not as extreme. So you can get away with less action, even though eventually it will catch up with you. And you've got an example of that in your book, and the father-son deal, and one of them takes 9 months to execute and the other one executes immediately. And the one that executes immediately is successful. The one that doesn't, takes 9 months to execute, fails. So eventually inaction will cost you. And you say, interestingly, that, in the SEAL teams, you must be conditioned to do this. I had to condition people to take action, even in the SEAL teams. Even a young SEAL leader who you would think would be, by nature, aggressive and an action taker, you put them in a pressure situation where there's not a ton of information and they need to make a decision, they don't want to act either. So one of the things that I would teach was that their default mode was to be aggressive. Their default mode was to take action. I would teach that. Same thing we just discussed. I wouldn't say, hey, look, that means you have to take action, but your default setting should be, I'm going to do something. Because I'd have a young SEAL officer and there'd be some training mission and there'd be a problem in a building and there'd be a bunch of paintball flying around in there. And he wouldn't want to go solve that problem. He'd back away from that problem. And I would have to go like push him in the back and say, you see that problem over there? You got to go solve that problem. It's not going to go away. You got to be aggressive. That's got to be your default mode, is to take action and make things happen. Because most human instinct is to wait. Most human instinct is to hesitate. Most human instinct is to let things go longer and stick with the status quo. And that seems to be on the front, the lowest risk in the situation is to not do anything. It usually appears to be the lowest risk. But just like the example that you gave in your book, it definitely seems lower risk. Oh, well, he wants money, he wants investment, new thing. I don't know. The lowest risk in that situation is to not do anything. And that's what many people do, whether they're in the SEAL teams or whether they're in business. So to train people to, oh, I need to take risk, some level of risk, take action, because in the long run, I say 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 times, action is better than inaction. 70% of the time, action. There's definitely times where you got to hesitate. There's definitely times where you got to hold back. And that's the other book you got there is called The Dichotomy of Leadership, because there's times, yes, absolutely, action, aggression. There's also times the other end of the spectrum was like, now's not the time to make a move. So it's definitely a dichotomy, but to me, 70% of the time, you better take that action. That's got to be your default mode.
I asked you what your hardest day in the SEALs were, and you said about losing friends. What was your proudest day? Is there a proudest day where you go, do you know what? I really showed up in a way that to a standard that I held myself to, and because I did, we accomplished something great together against the odds.
There's a multitude of times where I was in Iraq, I was in a detached moment in time, moving down a street, sitting in a vehicle, maneuvering, and I was watching my guys. I could see my guys, and I could see what they were doing. And I could see one of the most beautiful things in the world, which was guys that were exceptional at their job, working together as a team, maneuvering, protecting each other, accomplishing the mission. And I got to see that many times. And that's always, it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with them. It had to do with being able to see, look, were we perfect? No. But were there moments when you see an element cover and move for each other on the battlefield? A simple plan with the right priorities, with decentralized command. Was there times when I got to see all those things? Yes. And that, without a doubt, those were the best days.
Says something about, and I think I've kind of seen this throughout your work, is you have a real focus on service, serving others as a path to, I guess, fulfilling yourself. And we often think, I think many people think in life that the path to self-fulfillment is to serve yourself. But it seems that you've kind of figured out that the path is by serving others.
Yeah, I think there's an underlying core component and belief and innate DNA in the SEAL teams. And that is you take care of your friends. And that's not, in fact, if you're the type of person that doesn't take care of your friends, you're not going to be a good SEAL. You're not going to be a good SEAL. If you put yourself before the team, look, you can be a great shot, you can be strong, you can be fast, all those things, but no one's going to really want you in a platoon if you put yourself above them. And people don't really talk about that. No one ever told me that, but you feel it. And if you're not self-aware, you might slip into where you're looking out for yourself, and it's a problem. And this happens in life too. It happens in business where I see a guy that he's taking care of himself. And it's a smart guy, and he usually thinks he's pretty smart, and he usually thinks he's a little bit smarter than everybody else, and usually thinks that no one else is going to notice that he's taking care of himself. And everybody sees it.
Yeah.
And they dig themselves a grave. They dig themselves a grave. And I'm not saying they don't get away with it a little bit. Usually they get a couple promotions, they get to a spot, but ultimately people don't want to work with that person. And so they burn their relationships and they don't do as well as they should. And which is the kind of nice thing is if you take care of other people, they'll take care of you. If you screw over other people, you're going to get screwed over. So yeah, I think there's definitely that underlying theme in the SEAL teams. I've seen it now in business, and it is going to, if you look out for yourself all the time, it's going to catch up with you.
I think everyone can relate in this. If anyone's ever worked in a business and they have colleagues, I think everyone will be able to think about the colleague who is always seeking credit, is always, being selfish in the way that they're showing up. And then they can also think about the colleague who's the complete opposite of that. And it's funny, it was making me think as you were speaking that leadership is in fact, in many respects, it's given, it's not taken. I.e. the person that's showing up for other people, but also delivering on their own work is often kind of elected the leader of the group. This is, we talk a lot in business. I think it was Steve Jobs that said, the very, very best leaders in my organization were those that were so good at their job and they were never thinking about being a leader, but that's the reason they ultimately became it.
Yeah. When people ask me, and I got a book I wrote called Leadership, Strategy, and Tactics. It's like how to get promoted. How do you get promoted? Don't worry about getting promoted. Focus on the team. Focus on the mission. Focus on doing a good job. Focus on supporting your teammates. If you do those things, you're going to get promoted. And it takes, you'll have this, the dark part of your personality will say, yeah, but they're not going to notice. They need to see me now. And you'll raise your hand and say, I want credit for that. And the minute you do that, the minute you raise your hand and say, give me credit, your credit goes down. It's an unfortunate truth. The minute you ask for the accolades, your accolades are decreased because you're looking out for yourself and everyone can smell that. And they don't like it.
Yeah, you're saying that I'm more important than the mission in some respects.
Ugh, terrible.
Did you have people like that in the services when you were out there? People that were clearly selfish in the SEALs?
Absolutely. Yep.
How did you deal with that?
Well, if they were my boss, then I would make them look good. Build a great relationship with them. If they were my peer, I'd make them look good, build a great relationship with them. If they worked for me, I'd make them look good, build a great relationship with them. I think that as some people that have that kind of, they've got some kind of, is it a defect? I think it's probably a little bit of a defect, but they just feel like they need that recognition. They feel like they need to take care of themselves. And again, going back to what I was saying earlier, what did they go through in their life that makes them think that they gotta look out for themselves? And it'd be kind of nice if I could be a person that they go, man, this guy's treating me really good. And maybe I could help them transform from someone that doesn't trust that they're going to get the recognition that they need to, hey, there's good people out there and I'd like to be a part of this team.
Were you ever successful in that transformation?
I was successful. I was also unsuccessful. Some people, they have that defect and it's strong and they're going to look out for themselves. And there's very little you can do about it. And you try. But the ego is a very, very powerful thing. I mean, the ego is so powerful that there's countless cases of military history where a human being got himself and possibly his troops killed because of his ego. So if you can die because of your ego, you can absolutely make some pretty dramatic mistakes in the business world because of your ego. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.